Welcome back, my blasphemous friends, to another video on the explanation of the Cthulhu mythos. This time we're going to talk precisely about the great Cthulhu himself, about his spawn, and the lost city R'lyeh, where they still dwell today. For those wanting to support the channel, please subscribe to our Patreon. You can make a small donation by using PayPal, or a purchase through referral links in the description. Hit the notification bell to never miss another update. Leave a comment, and I will be glad to answer you. Translation from Italian by Laura Visioli. Credits in description. The Great Cthulhu. First appearing in Lovecraft's short story, The Call of Cthulhu, 1926. This creature is also called Torgnasuk by Inuits, Konaloa by Hawaiians, and Tulu by Ghanaian people. According to those writers who talked about him, he comes from the planet World, or from the green binary star known as Zoth, or Zoth, situated somewhere in the constellation of Taurus, and he is the greatest and most powerful of the Xothians. In The Call of Cthulhu, Francis Wayland Thurston recounts his discovery of notes left behind by his deceased granduncle George Gamble Angel, containing a report of Mr. Angel's conversation with a young sculptor Wilcox in March 1925. Wilcox revealed to have dreamt, after an earthquake, an ancient Cyclopean city, and to have carved a figure that seemed to be a sort of humanoid monster resembling an octopus. Over the same month, all around the world occurred cases of hysteria together with nightmares. What amplified the concern was the fact that in 1908, the professor had took part in a meeting of the American Anthropology Society, where Inspector Legras had shown a statuette identical to the recent one, which had been stolen from a group of Louisiana cultists adoring ancient beings called the Great Old Ones. These latter cultists had been awaiting the return of their priest Cthulhu, an octopus-like creature. Thurston got his hands on a Norwegian sailor's personal account. This sailor, called Johansen, wrote that he and some other mates had landed on an island that had recently emerged from water. They had inadvertently opened a portal, causing the release of no less than Cthulhu himself, from whom Johansen managed miraculously to escape. Now Thurston fears that he would be killed like his uncle and the sailor before him, as he knows too much and the cult of Cthulhu still lives and thrives. According to the description of the clay bas-relief made by the sculptor Harry Anthony Wilcox, that Professor Angel's grandnephew provides us in his account, and according to that of the statuette stolen by Inspector Legras from Louisiana cultists in 1907, we know that the space in which Cthulhu is portrayed looks like an octopus, a dragon, and a caricature of human form. Cthulhu appears to have a pulpy and tentacled head that surmounted a grotesque scaly body with rudimentary long and narrow wings similar to those of a bat's. The artifact displays a creature behind which stands a cyclopean structure. This makes us think about its gigantic proportions. The monster is greenish, swollen and robust, and he is sitting atop a pillar. His wings touch the back edge of a block, and prodigious foreclaws grip the front edge, and extends a quarter of his way down toward the bottom of the pedestal. Even though the moral of a similar creature is totally averse to human principles, there can be observed a hint of innate evil, and it is defined from ancient traditions as a supreme demon which inspires bloodthirsty human sacrifice. According to what old Castro said, He had been taught to immortal cult leaders in China, and from his discourse we become aware that Cthulhu and the Great Old Ones had filtered down from the stars millions of years ago and built the cyclopean city of R'lyeh under the Pacific Ocean. In the novella At the Mountains of Madness by Lovecraft, the scholars arriving in the Great Old One city after examining bas-relief finds out that the civilization of the Elder Things was at war with Cthulhu's spawn. A truce was finally declared, and the Elder Things ceded to Cthulhu and his spawn the newly risen lands of the Pacific Ocean. Millions of years ago, at some point, the island of R'lyeh, deep under the Pacific Ocean, where is located the capital city of Cthulhu's kingdom, sank under the sea, probably because of a natural catastrophe or by the direct intervention of the Elder Gods. Cthulhu cast a spell in order to place himself and his spawn into a state of suspended animation, until the moment when all the stars are right and propitious for their return. Great Old Ones can in fact remain on Earth only during specific cosmic cycles, which reconfirms their nature, profoundly different from ours. Those Old Ones are gone now, inside the earth and under the sea, but their dead bodies had told their secrets in dreams to the first man, who formed a cult which has never died. This was that cult, and the prisoners said it had always existed, and always would exist, hidden in distant wastes and dark places all over the world, until the time when the great priest Cthulhu, from this dark house in the mighty city of R'lyeh under the waters, should rise and bring the earth again beneath his way. And they found different idols, which the Great Old Ones had brought with them from Xoth. We know that those beings brought their effigies of themselves with them, so they are supposed to have a corporeal yet not material form, and they are not made of matter belonging to this universe. It is said that the Great Old Ones lay in stone houses in their great city of R'lyeh, preserved by the spells of Cthulhu. They know all that is occurring in the universe, but their mode of speech is transmitted thought. They can speak to the sensitive among them by molding their dreams, for only thus could their language reach the fleshy minds of mammals. From the story we can infer that each call will be more easily reached by those sensitive to art, and those prone to disciplines of thought and intellectual work, with an extraordinary sensitiveness and imagination, who have visions of scenarios related to R'lyeh, and hear terrible litanies celebrating its occupant. Reactions to the call of Cthulhu are ambivalent. While some people committed suicide, other people draw inspiration out of it, and others fuel their manias. Generally, the call leads to emotional instability, hysteria, inquietude, and morbid visions. Cthulhu will rise again only when the stars are right, in such a way propitious for him to return. At that time some force from the outside must serve to liberate his body, because the spells that preserved him and his spawn intact likewise prevented them from making an initial move. This right time can be recognized by a human attitude lacking in morals and tending to violence, as well as a savage mentality, which will be encouraged by the Great Old Ones beyond every limit. Technically, in the story there is no mention of Cthulhu as a Great Old One, but it is considered to be their priest. This subtle difference is omitted in all the derivative work in media that consider him as a Great Old One. We only know that it has something to do with the Great Old Ones. For example, those beings to whom Yogg Sothoth could open the gate from them to come back, as it is revealed in the short story, The Dunwich Horror. Here Cthulhu is their cousin, and he can spy them only timely. In the tales written by August Derleth, successor of the mythical cycle after Lovecraft's death, Cthulhu is the leader of the Great Old Ones associated with water, and he and his half-brother Astur, leader of air elementals, are bitter enemies. Here Cthulhu's goal is that of freeing himself and also putting an end to the cult of Astur on the earth. In Derleth's Trial of Cthulhu, Cthulhu himself is a protoplasmic mass with twisted tentacles, surmounted by an amorphous face with one eye. He has completely filled his original dimension, the city of R'lyeh, a place that manifests itself on Earth only when there are specific hypergeometric coordinates in places like Pohnpei Island, Peru, Arabia, and off the coast of Massachusetts. In other non-canonical versions of the story, we can find different interpretations of the creature. Sometimes it is an idol created by the Deep Ones. Other time it is an outer god that embodies the force of gravity, or an Old One's invention, or an interdimensional entity which exists inside the brain of living creatures only at a conceptual level. His powers aren't endless, and also his telepathy is limited from the huge mass of water under which his city had sunk. In Derleth's version, this happens because of the elder sign that the elder gods put on his sarcophagus to imprison him. In the novella The Shadow over Innsmouth, 1936, can be understood that dragons' initiates generally act as if they were Cthulhu's servants. In the novella The Mound, 1938, it is explicitly written that the great Cthulhu and Yig had come down from the stars with a certain number of humanoid creatures, called the Elder Things, which then ended up living in the subterranean kingdom of Knian, since when the Great Old Ones disappeared from the surface after the sinking of the city of R'lyeh. Cthulhu is therefore mentioned by Lovecraft in The History of the Necronomicon, Through the Gaze of the Silver Key, and in The Whisperer in the Darkness. The Cult of Cthulhu. Because of its dissemination and dangerousness, the Cult of Cthulhu is the very thing that stands out in the setting. It appears to be the first time in the short story, The Call of Cthulhu by Lovecraft. It is far from being an organization with its headquarters and a representative leader, but it is a sort of way of thinking, active since millennia, and with numerous autonomous lodges scattered all over the world. Their aim is that of preserving the memory of the Great Old Ones and praying for their return. And to make it happen, is it possible that they have to perform a sort of ritual, for example by using an artifact known as the R'lyeh Disc? Much of their ancient knowledge dates back to the very ancient black tablets of R'lyeh, created by the star spawn of Cthulhu. The cult boasts adorers in Greenland, Louisiana, the isolated plateaus in China, and in the intricate jungle of South America. Its focal point should be located in Arabia, in Irem of 1,000 Pillars. It has got its most ancient supporters among those immortal men dueling in the mountains in China. Among cult members, there is a large number of sailors and mixed-race people. They earn poison to kill those who ask too much and leave no trace. The sleeping great Cthulhu influences certain people to work on his behalf through their dreams, especially sensitive people like artists or different kinds of fanatics, by sharing with them part of his secrets. And by doing so, he aims at getting closer to the Great Old One's return. Cultists are really possessive about their secrets and make no bones at killing those who learn too much about their identity. In The Call of Cthulhu by Lovecraft, the cult killed Professor George Gamel Angel, his grandnephew Francis Wayland Thurston, and the sailor Gustav Johansen, as they knew too much about the story of Cthulhu. In this series of short stories called The Trial of Cthulhu by delle, Dr. Laban Shrewsbury becomes constantly targeted by the Cthulhu adorers because he had published some books revealing the myth's secrets. Those influenced by Cthulhu act in a very different way. Some of them try to perform magic rituals aimed at awakening the sleeping Cthulhu. Others abandon themselves to religious hysteria. Others take advantage of Cthulhu to cause harm to other people. One thing that is not yet clear is whether Cthulhu himself is aware or interested in their conduct. There are so many variations of this cult, which practically are secluded groups inspired by a common goal. For example, the Silver Dawn Masters, established in 1657, aims at making the corpse city of R'lyeh emerged and bringing Cthulhu back to life. The Black Brotherhood is instead a group of international terrorists acting like a secret society and dedicated to hastening the return of the Great Old Ones. They conduct covert operations, such as attempted political assassination, and operate in a lot of countries, like Brazil, Japan, China, United Kingdom, and the USA. Also, the Deep Ones are practically Cthulhu worshippers and act in accordance with his will. R'lyeh. The city of R'lyeh, also called the Corpse City, is a megalopolis which was built in the pre-human history of the world, maybe 350 million years ago, by the Great Old Ones, on a great rocky highland in the Pacific. Coordinates of latitude 47 degrees 9 S, longitude 126 degrees 43 W. Its titanic stone blocks and high buildings which it's made of remind us of the futuristic style. In the main city is characterized by an architecture based on a wrong geometry, so to speak non-Euclidean one, that puzzles human observers. For example, the buildings in the city have angles which are acute, but behave as if they were obtuse, and vice versa. R'lyeh is described in The Call of Cthulhu and in Medusa's Coil, as well as in the Mound, where there is a little mention of the city of relics that had disappeared beneath the sea together with the Great Old Ones, and that had probably been made to sing by a sort of space demons, perhaps 250 million years ago. In 1925, after a small earthquake tremor in New England, sculptor Harry Anthony Wilcox had a dream about a metropolis with massive pillars, black and dripping monoliths, and very high obelisks decorated with hieroglyphics. All around the city prevails a spooky atmosphere, and from its depths can be heard a non-human voice, monotonous and chaotic, from which can be recognized the words Cthulhu and R'lyeh. The island is characterized by greenish stone blocks, enormous for human standards, and angles having an unnatural geometry. Cyclopean masonry, steps made of stone blocks and giant, for human standards, statues and hieroglyphics displaying sea creatures can be found there. Sometimes matter seems upset, sometimes it appears to be acute, other times obtuse, and this puzzles those looking at it. Geometry looks wrong, and the change of perspective makes orientation difficult. Those hearing the Call of Cthulhu gets a vision of the city and also hear the chant Punglui Mogelnaf Cthulhu R'lyeh Fuganang Futagen. which means more or less, in this house at Relie, that Cthulhu waits dreaming. In the short story, it is written that after the series of earthquakes, the promontory where had been located the sarcophagus of the great Cthulhu emerged from the sea, and a group of incautious sailors opened the monumental door of Cthulhu's sarcophagus, and by doing so they caused the monster's temporary awakening. After a storm, the city sank again in the ocean, and Cthulhu lied clearly trapped among the ruins of its metropolis, as the stars were not yet in the propitious time for its return. In Medusa's Coil, in the painting made by the artist Frank Marsh, one can admire the city with its typical insane geometry and inhabited by certain beings that were all in part animals, and that were concentrated in performing outrageous Sabbaths. The Star Spawn and Cthulhu's Sons. In the Call of Cthulhu, it is confirmed that Cthulhu and the Great Old Ones were dueling on the island Relie at the time of its sinking. It follows that the term Great Old Ones refers to those who had come with them on Earth, even though it started also to indicate all the other monstrous aliens filtering down from the stars when our planet was young. The star spawn of Cthulhu is mentioned in a novella at the Mountains of Madness, where we learn about the fact that the primordials, which were found in the Arctic, had fought against some octopus-like beings and defined as the star spawn of Cthulhu. The war ended by a truce, which for the Elder implied a cession of the newly risen lands of the Pacific Ocean, and that forced them to retreat into the inland. Then the city of Relie sunk under the sea, bringing with it also Cthulhu and his sons. They are never shown, except where they appear in the bas-relief depicting the city of the primordials. What is more, there is no mention to their nature. Look they more like arthropods, or like octopods? It is still unclear whether those octopus-like beings are really the sons of Cthulhu, or another invasion force which had the honor to reflect these features. These beings, at least Cthulhu, look as if they were made of something different, yet similar to matter, as it is confirmed by the fact that the great Cthulhu got rammed by a steamboat, and soon after he could easily recompose himself from a sword of gas. But we don't know whether all the Great Ones resemble the great Cthulhu, nor we do know if they have the same body size of Cthulhu. From the Call of Cthulhu, we can infer that in Louisiana exists a creature similar to Cthulhu, and unless it's merely one of his manifestations, it could be one of his spawn. According to the legends of Native American tribes in Louisiana, since time immemorial, at the bottom of an unknown lake in the same Louisiana, has lived an octopus-like creature with bright eyes, which at midnight is joined by some bat-winged devils. In a sting operation, a policeman seemed to notice a figure in the distance. The inquiry cultists affirmed therefore that those with black wings, coming there from their gathering place, had committed the ritual murders. From handbooks of role-playing games, we can learn that Cthulhu is the largest specimen among the Exotians, which are octopoid beings resembling Cthulhu, though being far smaller than him. The Cthulhians can be enormous octopus-like creatures, or swollen entities with wings, claws, and the face with barbels on. They can be the same size as humans, or as real hills, and weigh over than 100 tons. They are greenish and slimy, whose shape and limbs can be easily reshaped depending on the need. For example, in order to attack, or to fly. Every cell in their body has got an intellectual function. As a consequence, the bigger the body, the greater the intellect. They speak a language called proviene. They are terrestrial creatures depending on a cosmic cycle that influences their activity and inactivity. So when the stars are wrong, they put themselves in a state of suspended animation, during which they can only send out their thoughts and spread their dreams through telepathy. It is assumed that they can reproduce primarily through mitosis, and they are for the most part sealed together with their parent among the ruins of Relie, in the depths of the Pacific Ocean. And together they will emerge at the right time. However, other creatures of that species are supposed to live in deep oceanic trenches, guarded by the Deep Ones and Shoggoth. It is rumored that 5 mighty Xothian sorcerers, the 5 Guardians, were settled inside huge holes underneath ancient towns, such as the Nameless City in Arabia, Greenland's glaciers, the New England, and the Amazon River Basin. Apart from the star spawn of Cthulhu, he has at least 4 sons, generated with the hermaphroditic being Idia. The Santu tablets recount that the deeds of Yogtha, the second son of Cthulhu, and Idia, the elder gods, imprisoned Yogtha in the abyss of E. Zoth Omonke is a water-dueling creature imprisoned beneath the seabed near Ponape, and communicates through dreams, just like his parent. Gathanathor is an Idia's god that had sunk into the sea together with the island of Mu, where he had been one of the most worshipped deities. Cthulhu is a 6-toed octopus with several tentacles that dueled in Ynthlai. According to some, if somehow Cthulhu were to ever be destroyed, she would give birth to him again. As such, she is guarded in Yi, where she took up residence. In popular culture. Citing all the products in popular culture with references to Cthulhu is definitely a mammoth task. For this reason, I will just make a list of those media where only the real Cthulhu is present, putting aside the countless creatures based on him. Apart from the various kinds of transpositions of Lovecraft's works, Cthulhu appears in the Italian comic book Grandi Antichi. It appears in 2 Italian comic book series, Cthulhu, l'Abisso della Ragione, where Cthulhu is the final enemy, and in I 3 uomini che rirestarono Cthulhu. Cthulhu appears again while dreaming in number 222 of the Italian comic book series Dampier, titled Il suicidio di Aleister Crowley, and in the number 232 of the same series titled La Compagnia Guerriera. In the comic book series The Fall of Cthulhu, he is evoked by Nyarlathotep and fights against Nodens. Cthulhu is also present in I, Cthulhu, by Neil Gaiman, in A Colder War, a novelette by Charles Stross. He is called Cthulhu, and he is a monster that devours dreams, and that is able to capture all the minds of those he manages to strike, and bring them into his mental multiverse. Again, in the video game Call of Cthulhu, displays Cthulhu in one of its endings. He is the main character of the video game based on comics titled Cthulhu Saves the World. In the video game Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of Earth, there are various effigies and a sculpture depicting the Great Cthulhu. He is present as a boss in Knights and Dragons, and he is conjurable in Scribble Notes. He appears in cartoons The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and Rick and Morty, and makes an appearance in the opening of The Simpsons. He appears in the title of the movie Cthulhu, even though here the great old one mentioned is dragon. Call Girl of Cthulhu and Cthulhu mention. It appears in his canonical version of the movie The Call of Cthulhu, 2005, which sticks to the novel transpositions. It is also present in La herencia Valdemar II, La sombra prohibida, though it appears far smaller than necessary. Moreover, he is mentioned in the movie Cast a Deadly Spell, and in the TV series A.N.T. Farm. Finally, he has been cited in countless numbers of songs, card games, board games, and role-playing games. In a broad sense, R'lyeh has been mentioned in every media where he said the famous words, "In his house at R'lyeh, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming." It appears in the game book The Call of Cthulhu, with the classic features that he has in a short story, and in the Italian location guidebook, having the title I luoghi di Lovecraft. In the episode number 222 of Dhampir, it is shown like a rocky island where the bizarre architecture is characterized by its non-Euclidean geometry, which makes orientation difficult, and where Shoggoth, the star spawn, and Cthulhu himself reside. This city is a manifestation of the multiverse, and it materializes in several places on Earth. In the saga of Dhampir, R'lyeh is mentioned several other times by the Deep Ones. In the comic book Neonomicon, the main character is one of her dreams visions, finds herself in R'lyeh with Johnny Carcosa. In the 2005 film version of The Call of Cthulhu, distributed by the HPL Historical Society, the island of R'lyeh is shown with its own philologically correct features, based on the description of the short story. The final monster of the aquatic horror film Underwater, even though it's not called by its name, is identical to Cthulhu. In the Italian role-playing game L'Alba di Cthulhu, R'lyeh itself represents the setting where the game takes place. Here, after the Great Old Ones awakened in 1937, namely the same year Lovecraft died, and after their undisputed supremacy over all of the earth, ancient cults makes inroads everywhere, and R'lyeh becomes the capital city of the new regime, with the Great Cthulhu sitting practically dormant at the center of the island, looking as if were silently guarding his small town. In R'lyeh there is a partially peaceful coexistence among humans, Dragonians Mygo, and Ghouls, in a distorted vision of the mid-40s metropolis, with the same social conflicts, and which is obviously characterized by countless phenomena, ranging from bizarre ones to obscure ones, coming from Platonian science or from other gods' witchcraft. It is possible to move around the city by the grotesque tentacle bus, a train equipped with tentacles that often clings mortally to the travelers, or by weird cars fueled by Shoggoth, and where you can bump into dangerous non-Euclidean geometry. In the role-playing survival horror video game Call of Cthulhu, there is a magic key called Key of R'lyeh. The cult of Cthulhu is present in all the role-playing games based on works by H.P. Lovecraft. In the gamebook series titled Choose Cthulhu, Il richiamo di Cthulhu, by the Italian Raven distribution SRL, there is the same plot of the short story. In the video game Sherlock Holmes, The Awakened, the cult operates in London and in other parts of the world by carrying out human sacrifices in order to awaken Cthulhu and bring about the apocalypse. In the video game titled Call of Cthulhu 2018, the cult is located in Darkwater, a small town on an island that reminds us of Innsmouth. The officiants, guided by an oracle in contact with the mysteries of Mythos, act in order to awaken a version of the master called Cthulhu, and control all of the actions of the main character to lead him to such an end. In The Witcher 3 are displayed some notes written by the members of the Cult of Cthulhu. He also appears in South Park, and in the short story Shoggoth's Old Peculiar by Neil Gaiman, and in the Midnight Eye Files, The Amulet by William Makel. The star spawn of Cthulhu appears in the short animation movie At the Mountains of Madness. One of the star spawn is depicted as a boss in the video game Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth. And even though it is invulnerable to bullets, it can be killed by flamethrowers. Cthulhu appears instead in human form in the game Chaos Code in the video game The Sinking City. And that's all I have to say. Leave a comment if you like, and I will be glad to answer you. See you in the next blasphemous video.